In today's build, I'll be showing 3 different circle cutting jigs, designed specifically to be used with 3 different tools. All are super easy and pretty quick to make, so let's get started. First on our list is the adjustable bandsaw circle jig. To start this build, we need to make a base. Really, any piece of scrap plywood will work for this. Now that we have our base, we need to cut a runner to fit the miter slot in the bandsaw. I'm going to use this piece of scrap maple I found in the shop as well. Almost all the materials used in today's builds are just scraps laying around the shop. Once a piece of maple has been cut to size, we're going to attach it to the bottom of the jig. Now we're going to bring the jig over to the bandsaw, and we're going to try not to drop it.
Got it, saved it.
Now with the bandsaw, we're going to make a cut aligning the back edge of the jig with the back edge of the table. With the jig positioned how we want it, we're going to clamp it down and attach 2 stops to the front. This will prevent any future accidents. Moving on to the pivot line. This is a line that will extend from the edge of the jig to the tip of the bandsaw blade. I'm now going to use our router with a 3/4 inch bit. I'm going to set the stop to the depth of our T-track. I like to use a nice clean edge on a piece of plywood as a guide. This will make sure my cut is as straight as possible. Now I'm going to drill a hole where we're going to start our cut. Now we're going to adjust our guide ever so slightly to make another pass. This will allow the T-track to slide with ease. Now that we have our groove and the T-track slides with ease, we're going to cut the track to length.
I don't know why that made me nervous. That worked great. That was perfect. Okay.
Oops. Now we're going to attach the key components that make this jig adjustable. To attach these components, we're going to drill a hole in our groove towards the edge of the jig. This will allow our pivot point to adjust and lock in place. We're now going to add a pin to the T-track. This pin is going to be the center of the circle. So to cut the pin to length, I recommend using a hacksaw. I couldn't find mine though. With the pin in place and cut to size, we're going to use a 2-part epoxy to ensure a secure fit. Once the epoxy is cured, it's time to make a test cut. We're going to find the center of our board and drill a hole for the pin. With a hole drilled in the center of our board, it's time to adjust our jig. We're going to make a 36-inch circle, so we need to adjust our jig to an 18-inch radius.
You ready? This is huge, dude.
As big as our bandsaw circle was, you still may need a bigger circle. And that's where our second circle jig comes into play. The adjustable router circle jig. Our first step is to copy the base plate to our jig. With the base plate copied, it's time to drill the holes to mount the router. I'm going to use a portable drill press to keep these holes as straight as possible. While I struggle to attach this router base to the jig, hit that like button if you found any value from this video so far. Now the router is one with the jig. It's time to do a plunge cut to find our center. Now we draw a line down the center of the jig. Just like in the first jig, I'm going to use a piece of plywood as a guide to get the straightest cut possible. Now that we have our groove, we're going to change to a 1/4 inch spiral bit and make that cut go all the way through. Now we have a slot on one side and a groove on the other. This is what makes this jig adjustable. I'm now going to drill a hole in a 2.5 inch piece of T-track. We need 2 of these pieces. After a quick test to make sure everything feels smooth, we're going to use our 2-part epoxy to attach the machine screw and pin. Now I'm going to taper the edges of this jig just for aesthetic reasons, just because I want to. To make sure this jig rotates smoothly, I do a quick sand and add paste wax to the bottom. Now it's time to test this jig. Find the center of your board, place the pin, and adjust the radius. Cutting all of these circles is making me hungry, but not enough to skip our last circle jig, a table saw. This was the easiest and fastest jig I made today, and it really surprised me. All the materials you really need are a piece of plywood and a runner and some screws. Once you've attached your runner to the plywood, draw a line perpendicular to the saw blade. This is your pivot line. Find the center of your board, drill a hole, and attach it with a screw to your pivot line. Once both pieces are attached, begin by cutting off the corners. With each corner you cut off, the circle becomes more and more visible until you have a perfect circle.
That worked really well. Holy cow. I am really impressed.
Now what are you gonna make with your 3 new circle cutting jigs? A poker table, of course. Watch the video where I make a poker table for the first time for a buddy of mine, using 2 of the 3 jigs featured in today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.